Hello. You are listening to the Carroll Connection with your host, Jared Carroll.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Carroll Connection. I am your host, Jared Carroll, here to bring you guys another great episode. I did want to take a chance to shout out last week's episode 110 with Matt Gallup. He works at an environmental consulting firm as well as his own picker business. So he does like antique cars, trucks, and a bunch of other stuffs. Tagged him in all the social media content, especially on Instagram. You can go check out his profiles. Really cool stuff. We talked a little bit about ancestry and like kind of tracing our family history back, which was a dope conversation to check out. Tune in to see all those episodes at thecarrollconnection.simplecast.com. Also available Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the major listening platforms, as well as YouTube. So if you guys like to watch your podcast, check me out there. Bringing in another guest, a new guest for episode 111, Tyler Pereira.
Thanks for having me, Jared. First time meeting, based on our conversation before this. I think everyone's in for a treat today. So
yeah, I think it's gonna be a really great episode. I'm really actually excited because like you send a whole list. I'm gonna pull it up just like I have it mentally right there too. I'm super excited that the fact you sent the list. It just gets me so excited for the conversations, especially based on the stuff that we've been talking about. How I start the podcast is just kind of let everyone know who you are and what you're doing currently.
Yeah, of course. So Tyler Pereira, like you mentioned, I'm in internal audit. So I work for a construction management company in Providence. So basically accounting realm. I've done that since I graduated college. So yeah, that's what I currently do right now.
Perfect. And we'll dive into more of these topics as we get later into the podcast. Like I said, off podcast and throughout the week, I've told you kind of like the layout that I go with. I usually like to start with family dynamic. And I like to always explain the reason why for any new listeners is to lay down the foundation of kind of where you come from and who you are. And then we kind of build on top of that. So I'll let you kind of take the floor with family dynamic and I'll let you lead the way and we'll follow.
Yeah, of course. So, was born in Providence, Rhode Island. I grew up primarily in Riverside, Rhode Island. Was raised by, two parents. My parents divorced when I was 2. So kind of, growing up, a split household. I had visitation rights with my dad. So every other weekend I was visiting him in East Providence and I was living with my mom in Bristol. I have one older brother. Shout out to him, Josh. He's 32 years old. So we're 9 years apart. As far as family goes, definitely a tough childhood growing up. Stuff wasn't always easy in terms of like my living situation and kind of just going back and forth from parent to parent. My father was an alcoholic, and he passed away in 2016 due to liver cirrhosis. But he was a flawed man. He abused my mother, but I really tried to never hold him accountable for that. I loved him. I know he loved me. Going, when he remarried for a second time, seeing the dynamic there, it was definitely something that I had to, grow up with, and live with. It's something that, I still think about today, things that I wish I could have done at a young age, maybe to like change his mind or like, just stop him from drinking. But, it's something that, I think it's part of the reason why I'm here today is like, I just really want to show that you can come from, humble beginnings and kind of make something of yourself. So, as far as like, my relationship with my mom, it's really good. She, was mostly the person that brought me up. So I got to see her, working 3 to 4 jobs. She wasn't really home. So, I was just going through the routine of elementary school. Coming home from school, mom wasn't home because she was working a night job. So, I would just, binge on some Doritos, maybe play some video games, and then rinse and repeat throughout the week. On the weekends, my father just, he taught me a lot. Like, I would, from school, he would pick me up from school on the weekend. So, having an alcoholic father, it's like you learn how to essentially become like a practical psychologist. So, like, I don't consider myself like the smartest person in the world, but I think, I have an innate ability to like read people and kind of just read the room and guide the situation. And kind of the reason I have that ability is kind of just hit him personally. Like, he would pick me up from school and I kind of just had to see by the way he by the way he drove the car up, like, who was picking me up today? Was it dad who wanted to go home and, watch movies and we were going to, order pizza and watch, cowboy movies all night? Or was it dad who, had a few drinks in him and maybe was going to, drive me home, a little tipsy, or maybe we were going to go for the bar for a little bit. So that's definitely something that, I had to deal with. So aside from that, yeah, I mean, I guess you can say it was a tough upbringing, but I have this philosophy that if you want to blame people for all, like, the bad in your life, which if you look at it, I could have potentially had a lot of bad. I like to blame them for the good too, because like part of the reason why, I think I'm a good husband, I think I have a great marriage, I think, I'm kind to people, is because I saw the opposite, right? Like my parents divorced when I was 2. And sorry, it's like my first time talking about it, so a little choked up. But I saw, growing up, the opposite, right? Like I saw how my father treated my mother, at times my stepmother too. And it kind of just made me want to be the opposite. But at times, I still have values like from my father. Like my father would take his shirt off his back, for a stranger. So like I think those aspects and stuff like that I still carry on with him today.
Yeah, I want to say one, thank you for being vulnerable to share that, because I know for a lot of people that could be really relatable too, because like people sometimes feel very uncomfortable talking about their upbringing when there's that element of when you talk about alcohol and possible abuse and things like that, and it can get really dicey for people to talk about, and it is uncomfortable because like there's trauma there. And as someone who likes to advocate for mental health, I've talked to a lot of people who've, and this is why I open with family dynamic, is because you really never know where people come from until you ask. And I think it's important to ask people where they come from so you can understand better, because if we're supposed to be as humans, try to be on some level to have some sympathy and empathy for people, you need to understand where they come from. Like I might not ever be able to fully understand where you come from, but if I can at least try, I can have the sympathy and like get closer towards empathy, because obviously empathy and sympathy are different. And I think a lot of people conflate the two. I think empathy is like truly understanding the experience, like relating to it. And then sympathy is like feeling like sincere for it, like kind of being able to console and like be there for that person. And as someone, I kind of come from a little bit of an opposite background. I told you a little bit about my family dynamic, where I did get to see kind of like how my older brother was raised versus how me and my brothers were raised. And one of the things that was always kind of like held against me, which I always like struggled with, was like, oh, Jared, you come from a great family. It's perfect in your family. But like, I told you some of the stuff off podcasts about my own personal life. And like, it's not always sunshine and rainbows. Like everyone has their own personal traumas. And like, I hate when people try to compare traumas, because I don't think that's like valid. And in some sense can invalidate other people. But being able to kind of like, I hate saying the word, but like accept the stuff that has happened. And like, I liked how you said to not blame other people, because like to fully understand, you would have to fully understand what they've gone through. And it's like this whole, like, it goes back to different generations and like how they were raised. And there's so many things that as humans that we can't fully grasp, especially as children looking at our parents. Like, I think one of the cool things about getting older is like realizing like they're just like us too. And like as a kid, at least I didn't fully see that. It's like, oh, those are my parents, like this like amazing, perfect people. And like, they have trauma too. They have stuff that they have to work through and process. And I think like kind of what you said, seeing the negatives does help with being like a great husband and things like that. And they talk about this with very successful people who come from nothing, because they had such bad that they were able to use that as motivation to be a better person. And I could see like the way you carry yourself, you definitely hold yourself in that light, which I think is fantastic. And I'm glad that you shared that. I know the second bullet point that we really wanted to talk about was like dealing with toxic people. So I kind of want to leave you with the floor with this one, because I didn't have this in the original list. Like I'm kind of interested, like why you were interested in talking about how to deal with toxic people, because I'm definitely someone who struggles dealing with toxic people from time to time. So I'll let you go with this one.
Yeah. So the main thing I wanted to kind of discuss, not to say like, I've dealt with toxic people, but I can see, how, situations can arise, whether it's family, friends, where, regardless of what it is, you may see see like people, feel a certain way to like maybe something you're doing or maybe something even you say. I just think, it's really important to kind of just leave that at the door, right? Like you have to have an ability to kind of let people say what they want to say. But at the same time, hold yourself accountable. Don't let that stuff get to your head. So I kind of just wanted it more to be, I've heard you talk about kind of like toxicity and stuff like that on your podcast. So I kind of just wanted it more to be like a back and forth between the two of us. I mean, personally, I've had to deal with it, growing up, maybe things that like, I've chosen to do and stuff like that, maybe not the status quo, kind of just saying like, oh, why is he going that route? Or like, why is he doing that? And kind of just, you hear like little chirps and stuff like that in the background. So, but I think I have a really good ability of just kind of closing it out and just saying, watch this, like, and that's what I try to do in like, every aspect of life, whether it's, trying to land a new job or like if, I hit rock bottom and like, it may seem like, I'm down for the count, like don't turn your back for too long. Cause I'll be there. So.
Yeah. And I think that's something I could really relate to is like, having stepped into this space as kind of like a social, I've had to kind of embrace the social media content creator like vibe, and putting yourself out in public is something that's uncomfortable. It's something that I struggled with in the beginning because you're innately gonna get judged regardless.
Right.
Like people are gonna judge the platform, people are gonna judge what you say, who you talk to, what you talk about, and I think part of the maturation process as people is to let go of what other people think. Like, obviously, it's hard as people because we do care about our perception from others, like how people perceive us. Because, like, I mean, that's human nature. We do care, and to sit here and say that people we just don't care is wouldn't be truthful completely. But learning to let it mean less to you, because obviously if someone close to you says something, it's going to sting a little bit more than some stranger on the internet. Like I've talked to you a little bit about my TikTok and stuff, and I've received wild comments before of people saying like crazy shit, or like I post a lot of breakup stuff and people like get over it or crazy stuff. But a lot of the time where you see those negative comments or those negative reactions, even about people in your own life, it usually stems from an insecurity. And when you're you learn how, because like it's almost a positive thing. If someone strikes you and makes you feel a certain way, there's a reason you feel that, and like there's a way to kind of like go deeper and internalize like, all right, why did I feel this way? Because if I was truly secure in myself, that wouldn't have completely bothered me. It maybe bothered me for 5 minutes, but why is it bothering me for this like past week? Because there may be some truth in what they have said, so you kind of have to like you said, be accountable, check yourself, like work through those processes. And like as someone who's gone to therapy, and I advocate for that for a lot of men who don't know how to, or were taught to how to process these emotions that we feel, because we do feel them as well. We are human. And I jokingly say that because like it's put out this image of men and stoicism where you kind of just don't show anything. But I think it's important. I know you mentioned going through that process with yourself, so I'll kind of let you kind of jump in on that too.
Yeah, one last thing I just wanted to say when you talked about people and just it's just really projecting like limiting beliefs. I kind of look at it as like regardless of my background, like the sky's the limit. Like I want to just be something big, something great, not for myself, but I think just to impact as many people as I can. So like that's like my drive. So like when somebody says why are you doing that, it's really just them projecting their limiting beliefs because maybe at a time like they couldn't get to somewhere they wanted to. And, all power to them. I've, been at points, I've hit rock bottom and stuff, but like, you got to just like pick yourself up and, get back on the road. So, but yeah, I mean, my challenge with, mental health and, I've actually I stumbled upon a therapist when I was working, and we'll dive a little bit more into my career later and stuff. But when I was working out in Boston, public accounting, I actually met a professional coach through like an app called Modern Health, who she was like coaching, entrepreneurs and a bunch of like tech CEOs in Silicon Valley. And I didn't know this about her. Her name's Amelia. If she happens to stumble upon this, she knows I'm talking about her. But I met with her a couple of times. It was a virtual interview, and at that time in my life, it was a rock bottom, like I was just talking about. And one of the things she said to me that really stuck out is, I'm a personal finance guy. She asked me, she said, Tyler, when the stock market goes down, she said, what do you do? And I was like, I hold. She's like, why? She said, why? And I said, oh, because I know, over the long term, it's always going to be up, right? So she said, why don't you do that with your personal life? And I actually have like a little bit of goosebumps talking about it, because the moment she said that, it stuck up goosebumps. It was like something that was like close to me, right? Like, I follow personal finance, I follow the stock market, I'm invested in stuff. So I was like, I just like stalled, and I was like, I don't know. And then she's like, you have the confidence that the stock market over a 30-year span is, going to be up 8 to 10%, whatever. She's like, why don't you have the confidence in the trajectory of your life? And like, after that, I kind of like, I started to look into her, and I'm like, who is this lady and stuff like that. And that's where I started to learn. And I still have a connection to her today. We don't have like regular meetings like we were, in the past, but she's definitely somebody that, that's going to stick with me, throughout my life. And there's times where, throughout the month that saying, like, goes throughout my head, and it's like the simplest saying, but, I think just because it was so relatable, it stuck with me. So, shout out to her for that. But, yeah, I mean, when you're in rock bottom, or like, in a spot that you feel like you can't crawl out, I just encourage you to kind of just reach out to the people around you, right? Like, my wife for me is kind of just like, that's my rock. Like, that's who I reach to. I have like one or two other friends, like really close friends that, I reach to, and they lend a helping hand. Like, if I'm, trying to crawl back for something, like they'll reach in and grab me. So I think I encourage anybody who's like, going through any mental health, issue or rock bottom, to find those people around you, gather them close, and not so much complain, but it's energy, right? Like, they'll vibe, they'll see that, you're going through a tough time, and maybe they'll like lend a helping hand and stuff like that. So
I think that's good advice. And again, thank you for sharing that, because like, as men, I think it's important to share these experiences, because people don't share these experiences. And we're taught, like I said, we're taught from an early age, just keep it in, just like hold it in, keep strong. Like, it's like, just keep moving forward, just keep going. And we were kind of talking about this little off podcast, where it's like, at a certain point, like, there's this darkness that no one wants to talk about when you're going through these tough times and these tough periods. And I always described it, I'm an avid hiker, and I've always described it as hiking. Like, going uphill, it's tough, it's hard, it sucks at times, but like, as soon as you get to the top, you think it's like, I reached the top, but then you look and there's so many more mountains to climb. And it's like, it's scary, but it's also like a positive thing. It's like, that is life. Hiking mountains is like life, because like, there is ups and downs all the time. There's peaks and there's low points, and you gotta learn how to navigate those. And like, it's tough for the people who don't have the tools. And that's where I'm hoping to, like, maybe if someone hears the conversation that I have with someone, can inspire them to like, well, if Jared tried therapy, maybe I could go try. Or like, hearing like yourself, like, you found her, and then you were able to have some casual meetings, and you started to like go regularly and like have those conversations, and like, having that person that you can have those conversations away from people that like truly know you, there is value in that. And like, I don't think people truly understand that, because like, one of my favorite things about my therapist that was like amazing about her was like, she didn't know me and she didn't judge me, but she allowed me to just kind of just talk it out. And I think a lot of people are afraid of their friends or their family or significant others, that they're going to judge them or hold them or look at them differently for going through things, which is usually not the case most of the time if you have good family and friends. But having an outlet, or having a therapist or a person where you can go to that doesn't truly know you like that, but is a professional, I think that's everything in the world.
Yeah.
It's super valuable, because as you're going through these difficult times and expressing all these emotions, like, you need that space to do that. And like, and as someone who's suppressed a lot of emotions in my life, you need the appropriate space, because it's not something that you just like snap your fingers and it's over. Like, it's something that's a continual process. And I'm really happy that you had that kind of space, and like, we had that conversation, because people don't really dive into that. And I kind of want to like, it's kind of like not a backtrack, but a spin into kind of childhood sports, because I like to talk about this because this is where the friendships are made. And I'm curious to know too, with like obviously your home life the way it was, where like sports and hanging out with friends, was that kind of like your way to kind of like get away from that for a little bit?
Yeah, so I was a part of an interesting group of friends when I lived out in Bristol. I mean, nothing against them. I love them to death, but I mean, we definitely don't talk now. But they were on a different path as me. I think one of them actually he passed away. He was from Guatemala. Unfortunately, he passed away on a motorcycle when he went to visit. And then the other one got pretty heavily into like drugs. And then the third one, I'm not too sure where he ended up. But I don't know if I mentioned, but I moved to East Providence my freshman year. So it was a big kind of change for me. And I'll go into the sports and then kind of talk about my movement into high school sports. So I started playing soccer when I was like 7, rec and Bristol Warren rec regional. So pretty much it was, nothing competitive. Middle school, 6th grade, I was pretty heavy. It's probably tough to imagine, but I was about 180 pounds, and I'm probably about 7 or 8 inches shorter. So I didn't make the soccer team my 6th or 7th grade year. That they just caught me. I couldn't make the runs. Intellectually, I knew the game, but just my feet wouldn't get there, right? So 8th grade, I trimmed down quite a bit. So I think from 7th to 8th grade, puberty and stuff went through, and I trimmed down. So I actually made the team, Kickmute Middle School. I played, I would say probably every single game. And then 8th grade, was a big pivoting point for me. Like I moved to East Providence. I was living in East Providence like my last year of 8th grade, and my mom was dropped. She worked in Bristol. She was dropping me off at school every day, and then I was initially I had family members that lived in Bristol Warren, so I was gonna use their address and kind of still go to school in Bristol, but live in East Providence. But at the time, it was like you were committing a crime if you did so. So, what ended up happening was I didn't have like a family member that was able to lend me an address, so I had to make the shift, right? Like, so I came from a small school in Bristol with like 200-300 kids to now East Providence High School with 1,800 2,000 kids there. And it was probably like one of the biggest shifts for me, aside from like growing up the way I did. But I remember like I wanted to literally drop out freshman year, and I've never been. You're probably surprised to hear this, but I graduated high school with like a 2.7 GPA. Like I said, I don't think I'm the smartest person in the room. Definitely not. Hardest worker in the room, but not the smartest, right? So yeah, I went to freshman year. I hated it. Like, I wanted to drop out. I was telling my mom every single day. Multiple meetings with the guidance counselor. He was telling me, if you don't stick in school, you're never going to be anything. All that good stuff. So yeah, I stuck it out. I played soccer throughout freshman all the way through senior year. Varsity, competitive. It was something that, I was really passionate about. My senior year, I got called to the Rhode Island All-Stars. It's kind of like the McDonald's basketball kind of series. I got called to that, and I actually got to try out for the New England Revolution, like youth team. So that was like a really cool experience. But then ultimately when I, graduated high school barely with a 2.7, right, I thought I was going to stay back. I applied to, multiple colleges. I had URI inside University of Rhode Island. Didn't make it there, like right out of high school. So I elected to go to CCRI for the first 2 years. I did get into RIC through like a scholarship for soccer, but I knew I wasn't going to be pro. So I decided to just go the CCRI route. Did my first 2 years there, ultimately transferred to University of Rhode Island and didn't play any sports throughout college. But I do occasionally play like, once a week in Smithfield, like at night and stuff like that with a couple of buddies and stuff. So I still try to keep the culture and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's super important. Also, one of the friendships you made, shout out Brock Handy for this kind of helping set this up a little bit. You checked out his episode and then followed the podcast, and as soon as I saw your page and saw some of the content you shared, I was like, definitely, I saw like possible guests. And as soon as you were down, I was like, perfect. One of my leading questions too with the college experience too is kind of like, why did you go to college?
Yeah, so first generation college student. I don't think I mentioned that. So nobody in my family went to college. My brother dropped out when he was freshman or sophomore year. My father owned a landscape company for over 30 years. My brother followed suit. Same thing with my uncles. They were all in the landscape industry at one point. My brother was more, landscape construction. So more of like the patios, pavers, and stuff like that, where my dad was kind of strictly grass. It was really just, I had the epiphany probably sophomore year that I loved accounting. I loved numbers. I loved personal finance. I actually still remember to this day, my accounting teacher, Miss Ritchie, she first day in the class, she said, "That's the accountant right there," like to me. And like, I still remember it to this day. She was actually an accountant for NBC. And then she, became a teacher. But yeah, straight A's in the accounting classes, right? But like everything else, I just struggled with. So yeah, it really just stuck me then. And then, when freshman year hit, I was still working landscaping with my brother. So, but I think once I went to college, and throughout college, I had a really successful, grade wise, because I was able to kind of do it the way I wanted to, right? Like I was taking night classes, working throughout the day. I didn't like the structure of high school. Like I didn't like to me, it was like a waste of time. I was like, what am I doing here? Like sitting all day. Like I wanted to like work, earn money, which I used to, and I used to skip class, right? I would work and earn money because I just didn't want to go to school. But when I got to college, I had the choice, right? I was going to school 2 days a week, 19 credit semester. So I was like overloading myself, and I graduated in 4 years, 150 credits. So that's technically a bachelor's and a minor within 4 years. But I was on Dean's List every single quarter. I think there's probably one quarter that I wasn't. But I think it's because, I had the ability to say, this is how I want to structure my day. So, yeah, that's pretty much my high school, college career, and kind of why I decided to stick with it. It was mostly just because of kind of my family growing up. Not to say that, you need to go to college to be successful, because I definitely don't think that. My brother dropped out and he runs his own landscape company, but I think to do what I want to do, which is ultimately, help people, personal finance and stuff like that, I need my degree, I need a CPA license. So really, to my realm of work, like what I want to do is that's the route I have to go.
Yeah, let me change the camera for us quick. Sorry for the audio listener. All right, back. As an accounting person myself, I can also appreciate the path that you're taking. Because like when and I've had a lot of people, it's always interesting when I have people on the podcast and we talk about the college experience, and so many people are just like, I didn't really have a choice. Like college was just forced on by usually their parents. And my route was like somewhat of that. I was gonna do Navy. I was gonna go in the Navy, and I had all that lined up. And when that didn't pan out the way I wanted it to, I was forced to look at college. And like I had no plan for college, because my whole plan throughout high school was just like play football, go in the Navy. It's a wrap. Because like my brother's in the Navy, I was like, I'm just gonna follow his plan. And it wasn't till like that fell apart where I realized, like, and especially a little bit later in life, where it's like, I'm glad that I didn't go in, and I'm glad I didn't work with that route, because I would have been following his life plan, not my own.
Right.
And it was like a tough experience. It was like one of the first more like traumatic things to experience, because I feel like I let a lot of people down. It was like I had this whole going away party. I'm going into the service, like we're going to do these things, and it just falls apart. And I'm like feeling like I just like failed, and I didn't have any plans. So I was able to kind of figure out. So I got some push from the side from some people in my life to go to school. Went to school, was going to do criminal justice, like I talked to you a little bit about off podcast, and found myself running over to the business school. And then for me, math just always made sense. I'm a very logical person. I like to think of myself as a realist, and I want the numbers. Numbers just always made sense. I was never, even though I am a creator, I guess, so it's kind of weird, but the English, like, kind of just like your opinion and stuff, like I always sucked at that. Like it just never floated my boat. And someone told me one time, I don't know if it was social media or someone told me, but like, it's like, yeah, the relationship you had with your English teacher determined your grade. And I was like, it fucking did. Like,
Yeah.
Cause like, it's all based on if they really liked you or they didn't. So I was like, cause like I had this one teacher who was a football coach. I always got A's in his class,
Yeah.
but like, cause like, I don't know. I just didn't know how to like communicate back then. I didn't know how to express myself, and like I'm very introverted.
Me too.
Yeah, so I think that's probably why we get along. And I just don't really like to go out and make a show of things. Like I said, I'm the first to say I love attention, but like it's such a weird dynamic. 'Cause I think I take like part of like my mom and my dad. My dad was he was the life of the party, and my mom's like, I'll stay home every single day. And it's like I'm somewhere in the middle, but as I get older, I'm starting to lean more into the introvert part. And I think personally, I'm like a spitting image of my mom, like low key. Like I just like we do things the same way, we think about things the same way, and like I'm a very expressive person. My dad's very stoic, very traditional. So it's something it's unique with the whole college experience. And something weird with college too is like the pressure that is put on the students with the whole process. And like were you in school at all with like the COVID situation
No,
that overlap? So you got out by
so I
then?
graduated in 2019.
2019, so right before.
Yeah.
So luckily you got because like I've talked to a lot of people about that experience, and like I feel bad for people who had to experience that because
Yeah.
like I'm not a fan of school, period, to like to be that disconnected from your class and like the professors. Like probably wouldn't have been a fan of that experience. I am interested in diving a little bit deeper into kind of like the personal finance, like and even up to like going up to Boston and getting into public, kind of like that experience of public accounting. Because like my perception as an accountant is like always just like this fast paced like life, and I know we could kind of dive into a little bit with mental health on this part, so I think that will help a lot of people who are in the kind of like 9 to 5 life.
Yeah. So yeah, I got so my senior year of college, I got a job offer to work out in Boston for a middle market public accounting firm. So yeah, I was stoked. It was actually a family member who got me like the interview because this place wasn't recruiting people from University of Rhode Island. That was the big stigma, right? With like kids, oh, you got to go to this school because like you're gonna get a job if you go to this school, right? And thankfully, like I'm so grateful for kind of the route that I took with college because I remember my guidance counselor used to tell me, if you don't go to a 4-year university, you're never gonna be anything. Like literally, he used to tell me those words, and I'm so thankful that God led me to the route that I did, right? Because like I did community college, I still got my 4-year degree, and I graduated with no student loans, never took out any debt to graduate. So, but if I had went the kind of the cool way or what everybody else was doing, right, I'd probably be sitting here with 20 or 30,000 in student loan debt, and
Looking at them.
yeah, I mean,
I wish I went the route that you did.
Yeah.
I say that all the time on the podcast, and if there's any younger listeners, like the community college route is such a better route to go because like you get the same degree.
But
like,
at the time, it wasn't popular, right? Like
No,
I,
it was
I
frowned
had
upon.
when I went to CCRI, right? Like I had friends tell me like, oh, like if you don't go to this school, you're not gonna get this job. And like mind you, like I know, not to knock anybody down or anything, but like I know friends that like I graduated and I had a job offer before I even graduated, and they were 1 year out and still waiting to like land their first job, right? So, I mean, at the end of the day, it really has not like it's just a piece of paper, right? Like if I'm able to like go into an interview and kind of sell myself or like show you why like I'm here to bring value, like that's all that matters at the end of the day, right? So yeah, I landed my first job. I was there for about 2.5 years, and really in that point in my career, like I learned like so much. Like I loved public accounting, right? But and kind of we'll dive a little bit more deep into that. But like I got married in 2021, so like my life just started changing, and like before I took the job, like if you would have talked to me probably like 3-4 years ago, I would have told you, oh, marriage is a scam. Like I don't want to get married. Like when I'm 30, I'll get married. But I literally like, and I remember this day, like I woke up one day and it just something clicked. I was like, oh my God, like I want to marry this person, like my wife. So, and I remember texting my friend right after, and I was like, Ricardo, I was like I want to marry her. Like I'm going to buy a ring. And then he was like, what? Like I thought like everybody that heard from me was like, oh, you only want to get married when you're older. Like you want to like just focus on work. Like you don't want to have kids or anything. But it literally just took a day, like one day, and it all shifted for me. Right. So like as I was in the process of that, I got married. We moved in together about 7 months before the wedding. We found a home. So I was in escrow and in the process of closing on the home. I actually quit that job in public accounting the week of escrow because I already had another position lined up. But it was still, the fact that I quit while I was like getting ready to sign up for a mortgage, right? It was still it was a lot of pressure on me, right? And kind of going into that, we purchased our house in August 2021. I got married in October of 2021, right? So I purchased a foreclosure in East Providence. I paid like $260 for it. It was completely run down, like horrible shape. So I literally had like, it was livable, but like we literally would have to like, scrub everything down. And I kind of, I was a fixer upper. So like I wanted to buy it. I wanted to fix it. Like that was the end goal in mind. But I didn't take into account like, I'm buying this house in August. I'm getting married in October. Like, where's the time to do all this, right? So, I literally shrunk the construction into 2.5, 3 weeks, where I had family members, a good buddy of mine, like helping me, take cabinets off the wall, rip up flooring, and to the end, everything ended up working out. But like that was like a point in my life where like stress, anxiety, everything was at peak. Financially, nothing was like bothering me. Like granted, like God bless me, like I was able to like financially weather the storm, but mentally and like all the pressure and all the pulls and tugs that I had going on at that time was like just so tough. Like and I think I mentioned to you, like nobody knew. Like I guarantee you like 95% of my family and stuff like that don't know that I struggle with like mental health, and stuff like that. So it actually it happened like out of my control. Like I had a panic attack in front of my wife where like, and it's like bad to say this, but like I would always think like anybody who said they had mental health issues, oh, like they should get over that. Like, and I think that's, piled on like over years for me. Cause like, I always thought it was like this thing, like, oh, that's like fake. Like if they really have mental health issues, like they just got to power through it. Like that is what it is. Until one day, like it hit me like in front of her and like I couldn't mask it at that point. So yeah, I mean, it's been like a challenge for me to be like more vulnerable, but I think, your mess is your message, your test is your testimony, right? So I think one of the biggest like callings for me is to really speak my story and kind of show, if people may think like, where he's at in life, like it's not all sunshine and rainbows, right? Like I have issues. I'm normal, just like everybody else. So I just want to be, relatable to the next person for them to understand, like, if you think like, where I am or like where you want to go and you want to get there, like just know like there's going to be challenges all along the way. But like we talked about, nobody talks about the light at the end of the tunnel, but everybody talks about the light at the end of the tunnel, but nobody talks about the darkness in between, right? So like that's what I want to focus on, the darkness in between, and that it's okay to discuss those things. And I think talking about it is how you get through it. So
Yeah, excuse me, I was choking up a little bit, to be honest, like hearing you talk about that, because like that is like the crossover that I hope so many people take, is like, because I know a lot of people, I have friends in my life who kind of have that same opinion on mental health. It's like, it doesn't matter, like you just got to get over it, like it's like just this thing. And I'm like, it's not just that. And like I don't think some people just don't fully grasp it, and I think they suppress it too. And like you said, the more you suppress, I mean, my therapist would say this all the time, if you suppress and suppress and suppress, it's gonna come back stronger than when it was when you first dealt with that issue. Because if you just deal with the issue when it's in your face, you can make a better adjustment to the aspect and like to the issue at hand. And that is something that I struggled with for most of my life. I pushed everything down. That's just what I was taught. I was very similar to how you were, where it was like, you don't express things, you don't say things, like you set the expectation high and you go get it, and like you don't show weakness. Weakness is like a bad thing. And I think strength comes from those weaknesses, knowing that you have weaknesses and being not afraid to be like, yeah, this is what it is. Like I'm not afraid to say that I'm not good in X, Y, and Z, but I am working on those things and being accountable into working those things. Because I think the back part about mental health too is like making sure you are working on those things, because if you're not progressing, by default, you are regressing. And I'm a firm believer in that. And like the aspect of taking mental health days when you need them, like taking days off, like going on vacations, using your PTO. Like I'm someone who doesn't use my PTO often, and like I kick myself for it. I do the same. It's just like you get honed in on the work. I'm super like into my work. I want to get it done. Like I don't like taking time away from it. Like because I am to a degree, whether I like it or not, I am career oriented. I do have a vision for my career. But and even with this podcast, I barely take time off from it. I'm like week in, week out behind the microphone, making sure I'm doing content, making sure I'm having like a new conversation with people. And it does weigh a lot on me. And I've learned the last couple of years too, since I've been doing this around December, I try to take like a couple weeks off, like the holidays, and like give myself that break because just as people, we need that.
Yeah.
And I don't think enough people do that for themselves. And like you said, having these conversations about those dark moments where like there was plenty of times where I just didn't want to be here. There's plenty of times where I felt like that. And I don't think people are afraid of saying that because like they think it's like, oh man, something's really wrong with this kid. But it's like, no, I think most people feel this way. And like, it's normal to say, yeah, like there's bad days and there's good days. Like you said, everyone wants to talk about the light at the end of the tunnel, but no one wants to talk about this shit that's fucking tough. And I was kind of talking to you a little bit like off air about like one of my favorite rappers and like pop punk MGK, and he was talking about in this interview about answering a question related to therapy and like kind of working and coping with the pain of just life, and if healing your pain takes away from your creativeness. And that's something I've been personally kind of like working with my own self right now these last like I'd say since kind of like I've kind of realized in summer. And I don't know if you listened to the episode with Brock that I had recently, where I talked a little about like I felt like I was kind of sliding, and I felt like this. It's been like this all summer where it's just like I have this vision for myself that I feel like I'm getting stagnant in, but it's like I'm not. I'm doing great in the gym. I'm working every day. I'm doing this podcast. I'm having new conversations that are amazing. I'm making content, and it's getting back to that reminder of like you have this vision. You know what you're going to do. You just got to be patient. And I think patience is the aspect that a lot of people miss from their lives. I don't know if you could relate to that in any way.
Yeah, I think even just, I mean, patience, even just in the personal finance like realm and stuff like that, and we can talk a little bit about that. But I mean, in terms of like, the biggest thing is like, I think just comparing yourself is like the biggest kind of steal. It robs your happiness, right? Like that's like everybody, we all do it. We're all like, everybody compares themselves regardless of, you know, what anybody says. Like, oh, I don't compare myself to anybody. Like, but we're always like looking, we're always guiding, right? But like, you have to really just like try to take a step back, because like at times in my life where like I just mentioned, like I had just bought a house, like financially, like I wasn't struggling, like stuff like that. Everybody from the outside, right, like they looked at me and they probably thought like, wow, like the kid's doing, but like I was having like, you know, like you said, like fantasies in my head, like where I didn't want to be here, like honestly, like, and honestly what kept me here was like my wife. So like that's why like God brought me to her, and like God brought her to me, and like honestly I'm just so gracious for that, because like I do, like, you know, personally believe like if it wasn't for her, like, you know, where I've came in life, and you know, I've, like I mentioned, we've known each other for over 9 years now, so like where I've came in life, she's just been a big, you know, proponent of that. So
I think that's a huge thing. And like to hit on that too is like I've gone on the last several episodes about like family and like how important family is, and having someone in your corner, like she's your family. Like, and I think having that person or those people, like whether it is friends, because friends can be family, having those people in your corner that you can rely on when those times get tough. Like I have like a good group of people who I know that if I need to reach out, they're right there for me. And I do
add me to that list.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's like, especially the conversations we have, like this is not like the normal conversations people have, and that's why like I love doing this, because this is our first time meeting in person.
Yeah,
and to reach this level of vulnerability and the depth of the conversation, it takes special people to do that. And like obviously, it's kudos for yourself for sitting behind a microphone with me, because like it is intimidating, it is tough. Like you see the camera, you see the lights. It can be a lot at first to like kind of like take it all in, but I don't think it's too bad once you get going and stuff. I think it's like we're rocking and rolling. We're ended up to the back end of the podcast, and I don't want to miss any bullet points that we hit. But I know we want to talk a little bit about kind of like the passions and like with personal finance, and we talked a little bit about real estate. So I'll let you kind of dive into that, and then we'll start wrapping up in the last few.
Yeah. So again, I'm truly just so passionate about, you know, personal finance and really just helping as many people as I can. get to financial freedom in particular. Recently, I would say probably in the past like 2-3 years, I've kind of just like really dived into that space personally. Like, I've started, my budget and stuff like that. I had my first bank account when I was 20 years old. I started it with $1,000. Not ashamed to say it. I used to make, decent money. I was, working landscape and stuff, but like I did not know how to save my money. And then, once my dad passed away and I kind of just saw like how that situation ended, and stuff like that, I just really became passionate about, setting myself up, for the future and, helping as many people as I can, presently, whether regardless of age. Like I have family members that I've helped, with credit, budgeting, helping, 401ks and stuff like that. And that's really where I want to take, my career. Like, so like one of the big things I'm trying to do is get my CPA, right? Like it's an accounting. So it's 4 exams, 4 hours each. You got to pass all 4 within an 18-month window. So that's like kind of my next big goal. I think I've kind of put that on the back burner because I've been doing all these other personal goals. Like, I got married, I bought a house. So I just like threw the CPA like on the back burner, right? But like now that like, I have a new job, I'm not working, 70, 80 hours a week. One of my main focuses is getting that. Because like in the 5-year, horizon, I want to, have my own firm. I want to take on, clients, whether it's like individually or, high net worth, but really want to focus in on like, people that come from, humble beginnings, maybe a lower income, and kind of just help them show you that it's, it's not that hard to get there. And that's kind of like one of the things I preach with like personal finance. I think, culturally, there's a lot of like standards set. One of the big things I did, not so much mistakes, but kind of the lessons I learned when I was like 18, right? That's kind of the thing everybody does, right? Like, finance that brand new car, right? Like, so that's like what I did when I was 18. But one of the things I really preach at a young age is like steer away from that. Like my wife's sister's boyfriend, he just bought a car, and he was like same thing as me. He's like, if I could go back, as dumb as it sounds, the one thing I wish I didn't do was finance cars. Like from when I was like 18 to like 20 years old or 21, I think I might have had like 5 or 6 cars. I was just jumping from car to car, and nobody at the end of the day really cares about what you drive except you. So, I think that was like the main differentiator, aside from like investing and stuff, because everybody's like, oh, what is it? It's only $200-$300 a month, right? But like, I think just like mentally, it's just like one of those burdens that like if you don't have it, it allows you to invest and like do other things that are kind of more worthwhile. So, probably one of the best things I did was I got out of my car payment when I was like 20, end of my 20, probably right when I turned 21. And I drive a 2010 Corolla. We just purchased a car for my wife. 2022 is what I drove here today in. Paid for it in cash. So like stuff like that is like why I preach, getting out of car payments. Because if you would have asked me like 4 years ago, like, is it possible to like do that? Like I would have told you like, no, like you just get a car payment. But like literally in that short amount of time, like you'd be surprised like what you're able to like accumulate. So like that's one of like, the main things I try to preach, personal finance, and kind of my goal is to get to a point where like I'm able to like take over, and help coach people like one-on-one personal finance. So
yeah, I think that's really great because a lot of people are literally financially illiterate and don't understand. I mean, the basic principle, I forget the statistic, but most people are like sitting in debt, don't have like, I think it was like less than like, it's definitely less than 5,000. It might have been like
80% of people live paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. Like people don't have money, and like as someone who came from like my dad had a child before I was born, and then got married to my mom, and he went back to school and worked extra hours. And like this is something that I realized later in life was like the fact that he worked so hard to get where he was and get the job that he did set me up for success.
Yeah.
And it's this constant building blocks that I want to keep progressing. And like it goes back to family. It's like I want to set up my family for success, and like I'm still going to teach them the principles of hard work. And like as they get older, I like what Shaquille O'Neal does with his kids. Like he's obviously a super rich athlete. He's like, when his kids is like, this is my money, it's not your money.
Yeah.
He's like, he'll help them out, but he teaches them like it is his money and they have to earn it themselves, because like a lot of the stigma with kids who come from well-off families is they don't know how to work for it.
Yep.
Because like if it's given to you, you don't know the value behind it. And like that goes back to what we said even in the beginning of this podcast, is like coming from those tough beginnings do lead to a lot of success for a lot of people. And obviously the other side too, it can lead to more negative. But teaching those principles and building upon that and setting up my family for future success, but also in the process of this podcast is talking to so many different people who have such a different outreach and different career, different purpose, different passion, and like talking these different things. And someone's going to listen to this and like maybe they hit you up and be like, hey, I need some like consulting in this area, or I need some advice into personal finance. And like I think that is like something that's super valuable, and it goes back to the connection that I'm trying to build, is like these connections that add value to people's lives. And I know just having this conversation right now adds value to my life, and I appreciate you coming on this podcast. I'm going to start taking us home right now. I do have one more question for you, which is tied to passions, but I'll allow you, if you have anything that you want to add on to what we said, or something you didn't say, as long as it's not tied to like the passion stuff.
Yeah, just one last thing about just like the whole money thing.
Yeah.
I certainly don't believe money is everything, right? Like
Yeah.
a rich person only has one dream. An ill person, an ill person only has one dream. A rich person has a million, right? Like somebody who's ill, they just want to get healthy. A rich person maybe has a million dreams, right? But like I'm like a big proponent of focusing on your personal health and stuff like that. But like I got to see firsthand what like not taking care of your finances and stuff like that. With my dad and stuff, like when he passed away, it was a struggle when he passed away in 2016, like his like funeral burden like fell upon his kids. So like that's something that like I never want like my kids to ever have to deal with. So like I think that's one of the main drivers. But money isn't everything. It just makes you more of what you already are. So if you're a giving person and you make a lot of money, you're going to give more. If you're a bad person and you make a lot of money, you're going to be a worse or badder person. So yeah. I like to think I'm a good person. So like I want to accumulate wealth so I can, hopefully one day my kid's 18 and they want to start a business. I want to like, show them the way, and like, or not even just my kids, anybody, that I can help. That's what I want to do with money ultimately.
That's a perfect way to kind of tie the bow on the conversation.
Yeah.
That's the perfect way to wrap it up, because I agree, money is never everything, and I've even made those own concessions in my life. Like I'm more than happy making, if I had to make what I make for now for the rest of my life, I can be at peace with it, because I know I have time for family and I have time for friends and I have time for my own personal health. Obviously you want to make more, and everyone wants to progress in their career, because I'd like to provide for a large family if I could possibly be lucky enough to have one. But at the end of the day, I also know as a person that family is way more important. Family, friends, and living your own personal life is what you look for. I mean, my grandfather's advice was take a chance, live the life you want to live, don't live with regrets. We'll start wrapping this up. I'll ask you my last question. I ask this to everyone that comes on the podcast. What would your advice be to someone who wants to pursue their passion?
Deliver on the commitments you make to yourself. So like if you say, I'm going to wake up 1 hour earlier this week to like, start working on my side hustle, or to start researching more, like deliver on it, because the most important promises we keep are the promises to ourselves. Like literally, like that's been the main game changer for me. Kind of one of the tricks I do now when I get up, it's not so much a trick, but every day when I wake up, I'm ecstatic. Like I'm so thankful for like another day. Like you don't even understand. Like I when I talk about it, I get like really like passionate. My wife, like sometimes when I wake up and I'm like, she's like, oh, you always have so much energy in the morning, like always smiling, happy. I'm like, because I was like, we got another day. I was like, it's awesome. I was like, I always like kind of make this analogy. I was like, if I told you could win the Powerball, but you only get 24 hours left in life, anybody is going to say, no, of course I'm going to take your life. So I always tell this everybody, why don't you wake up every day like you won the Powerball? I was like, because you're valuing your life more than money, right? So like wake up every day. Like I value every day as like, I get another day. Like I can go out and like do something. So it's really just deliver on your promises, right? Like hold yourself accountable, where it's like, if you want to start something new, if you want to do something, like one of the big things for me is like getting back into studying, right? Like I've been studying on and off, but like now it's like every day it's in pieces, like build that habit again. of like getting to the point where I was like in college, where I was, studying all the time, stuff stuck with me. And then ultimately, like, I'm able to pass the exam. So that's what I would leave everybody with.
That's a perfect way to wrap up this podcast, Tyler. I appreciate you coming on this podcast, sharing your story with me, sharing your career and everything that you've gone through and everything you wish to accomplish. I really appreciate that.
Thanks for having me, and I hope we're able to help a lot of people today. So
I think we will. So for you guys who are listening, if you like the podcast, please rate, review, subscribe, share with your friends, share with your family, share with your grandma. You can check it out at thecarrollconnection.simplecast.com. Also available Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the major listening platforms, as well as YouTube. So until next time, guys, peace.